Hey everyone, my name is Alex and I'm a certified public accountant. In today's video, I'd like to go over how to pass the CPA exam while working full-time. These are practical and realistic tips that I wish I knew back when I started my CPA exam journey. I'll break these tips down into exam day tips, study tips, work-life balance, and planning tips. So let's get into it. So let's start with exam day tips. The first tip in this section is to read the last sentence first. When you come across a question on the CPA exam, you'd like to identify what the question is asking about, and that's usually contained in the last sentence of the question. Now, a lot of the other information in the question, it could be filler information, or it could just be irrelevant to the question being asked. And you don't want to get confused, but if you start from the beginning and you read all the information and you get distracted by other things, you want to be able to identify the question first, and then go back and read through the question and identify which information is relevant and which information is not relevant. So by reading the last sentence first, it really helps you get through these problems and do better on your exam. The next tip is to write out key information after you enter your launch code and start the exam. So the exam will typically give you a blank sheet of paper in which you can write whatever you want on that sheet of paper after you enter your launch code. Now, please abide by testing policies and procedures before you start your exam. But once you enter that launch code and start your exam, you can write out whatever you want. So if you have things memorized like mnemonics or key terms, categories, definitions, things like that, I would try to spend like 5 minutes before you even look at the questions to just write all that out and get it all down on paper. That way you can reference it throughout the exam. My next practical tip that actually worked really well for me is to try to rest and relax a day or two before the exam. Now, I know what you're thinking. These are some of the biggest exams of your life coming up, and I'm sort of telling you not to study. Well, hopefully by this point, you've already done your final review. You've spent hours and hours and hours studying this content. And I think it's actually a little bit more important to come in fresh with a clear mind than to try to cram things last minute. Now, hopefully you've been quizzing yourself down the road. We'll talk about that in the study section. And you have a good grasp on the material at this point. And I think you should save your mental energy because these exams are like 4 to 4.5 hours each. And I think by having a fresh and clear mind, you give yourself the best chances of scoring a high score on these exams. All right, now let's move on to our next section of tips, which is for study tips. The first tip in this category is to use a CPA review course. Now, personally, I used Becker, but there's also UWorld, Surgeon, Ninja. There's lots of different CPA review courses out there. I did use Ninja to supplement when I took Reg, so I used Becker and Ninja for those. And then for all the other sections, I just used Becker. And I think having a CPA review course is vital to because lots of them give you a textbook. They give you multiple choice questions. Lots of them have task-based simulations. Each review course is a little different, but I think most of them give you all these key components. And that really helps you organize all the material, and it points out which material is important. They'll give you good mnemonics to use. They'll give you definitions. And a lot of review videos as well. So I think using these review courses, although they can be expensive, hopefully if you were working in public accounting, your company will pay for them. I think it's just vital to passing the CPA exams. All right, the next study tip is, in my opinion, the most important study tip of them all, and that's to quiz yourself a lot. Now, by quizzing yourself, you're practicing active recall, and that means actively retrieving information from your brain. So I don't know about you, but I can read all day, watch lecture videos, and then when it comes time to take the test, it feels like I totally forgot or I blank out on the material. But by actually quizzing yourself in a low stakes environment, which is when you're studying before the exam, you get to practice retrieving the information from your brain, because it's not just being exposed to the information at first or learning it initially. You also have to retrieve it. If you can't retrieve it, then it's not going to come out very well on test day. So by practicing retrieving it, you really identify where your weak areas are and where your strong areas are. And then you can really hone in and repeat the weak areas as needed. So I think by quizzing yourself all the time, you should be quizzing yourself weekly, if not almost daily when you're studying for these exams. It really helps you identify what areas you need to spend more time in, and also if you truly know the information or not. I know I can almost lie to myself by reading over a section or watching a video and I think I know the material, but if I can't actually answer questions right on that material, then I didn't actually learn it. So it really helps you just be honest with yourself and make a fair assessment while you're studying. So having this active recall, practicing retrieving the information, answering questions is absolutely vital to your CPA exam studies. My next study tip is to consider using the Pomodoro method of studying. This involves usually studying for like 25 minutes at a time and then taking a 5-minute break and then repeating over and over again. By taking these short breaks, you're able to kind of break it up into shorter chunks of time period. I think you're more likely to stick to studying for longer periods of time. And it just helps it helps you retain the information a lot better if you're taking these constant short breaks. I think by doing these short spurts, it also makes it feel less daunting to sit down and study for 3 hours. If you can just, study for a little bit, take a quick break, study for a little bit, take a quick break, and then maybe on your third time, the breaks become longer until eventually your study session is over. So I've found this method is really effective. It kind of helps me not dread studying as much if I know I have a break coming up shortly. So yeah, this study technique has absolutely been vital when I was passing my CPA exams. My next study tip is more of a mindset shift, and that's don't shoot for perfection. Now, to pass these exams, you need to score above a 75. Now, what a 75 is on the CPA exams, it's a little unclear. It's not necessarily a raw score. It's not necessarily a curved score. I think I'm not going to speculate exactly what a 75 is, but I just know that you need to get over that hurdle to pass the CPA exams. So for me personally, I was always trying to aim for like about an 85 when I was taking these exams. Now, I know that's a little arbitrary. How do you know you're at an 85 or not? I tried to just kind of make an honest assessment based on how well I did on the practice exams and how many practice questions I was getting right at the time. And by aiming for an 85, it kind of gave me a little bit of a buffer so that I knew if I got, more difficult questions on the exam, I should hopefully have an okay buffer to still pass, while also reminding me that I didn't have to know every section perfectly. There are going to be some things that you just don't know on the CPA exam. And I think it would take way too long if you're shooting for 100% on these exams. So by aiming for around an 85 or just reminding yourself that you don't need perfection, it really helps you kind of use your time wisely and move on sometimes when it's necessary, even if you don't get everything perfect in each section. And just kind of keeps expectations realistic so that you can pass the exams in a reasonable amount of time. My last study tip is to use mnemonics. Now, I loved using mnemonics when I was studying for the CPA exam. It helped me memorize a lot of key information. And like I mentioned earlier, I wrote down a lot of these mnemonics after I logged into the test and, I was able to write on those blank sheets of paper. And so these mnemonics really help you memorize and refer to this information when you're taking the exam. Now, mnemonics usually consist of having a few letters down the side and then filling in the words or the rules across. And this is even part of quizzing yourself. I would take out a blank sheet of paper and seeing if I could write out the entire mnemonic from memory. So I use mnemonics a lot to study for the CPA exams. Whatever you can use to help you memorize information, I say go for it. For me personally, mnemonics, flashcards, all these types of things were really effective. The last category involves planning and work-life balance. In terms of planning these exams, you can take them in any order you'd like, but I recommend starting with the hardest exam first, which for most people is FAR. FAR is usually the most content and the most difficult, and then alternating between what you view as a hard exam to a little bit easier exam to maybe the second hardest exam as your third exam order, and then ending with the exam that you have left over. Now, this will be different for everyone, but I do think it's really important to start with the hardest one and to get FAR out of the way because it really applies to a lot of the different sections. It builds a good foundation of accounting knowledge that you'll actually use in the different sections. Also, it's a bit of a mental thing. Once you finish that exam, you're 1/4 done. But I think by starting with the hardest and the longest one, you're almost 30 or 40% done progress-wise because you did the hardest one first. Now, I will have a caveat to this. If you feel behind and you feel like you're going to give up, then I would say, honestly, just take the easiest exam next. You want to build your confidence. I don't want you to give up on taking the CPA exam. So if, taking an easier section next or first will help you sort of build some confidence and gain some, some progress under you, then I say, shoot for an easier exam. But if not, I would recommend you start with the hardest exam first. My last and final tip is to make sure you prioritize your physical and mental health while studying for these CPA exams. Now, I can speak from personal experience. It's really stressful going through these exams, especially while working full time, not to mention all the other life commitments you might have outside of work and studying. But I think it's paramount to really prioritize your physical and mental health and, just take care of yourself wherever you can, whether that's going for a mental health walk or going to the gym, exercising, having a hobby, taking the day off and taking lots of breaks. This is a key. Not only will it help you, come back more fresh and ready to go to really learn the information better, but it's also necessary because it's a marathon, not a sprint. You don't want to get burned out and you don't want to give up while you're going through this process. So I think, take a deep breath, take your time, come up with a study plan, and whenever needed, take care of yourself, eat right, get all the exercise you need. And I think that'll really help you pass all these CPA exams. So those are all my tips on how to pass the CPA exam while working full time. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like so that YouTube will help suggest this video to other CPA candidates. And also leave a comment down below on which tip has worked well for you, or which tips haven't worked very well for you, and where you are on your journey. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.